The goal of any great online community is to get members connecting with each other, not just with you. But how do you actually make that happen? Our guest today on Talk About Your Community, Brian Fretwell, found the answer in a place that no one would expect, a story that became a viral TED Talk. It's not about better content, it's about better questions. Get ready to learn how to draw out the hidden leaders in your group. Let's get started. Kalisa, roll the opening. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. You've tuned into Talk About Your Community, a Friday live stream show that goes up on YouTube and LinkedIn Live right here. And I'm really glad you were able to tune in today. We also have a podcast. If you prefer to catch us in an audio-only format, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, all of your favorite podcast apps. So I do hope that you tune in one way or the other. We have an amazing array of guests who come in and have perspectives about building better communities, online, offline, and my favorite, those that take advantage of both. So with that in mind, I am really excited to welcome our guest here today on the live stream, Brian Fretwell, who's been featured in TEDx talks, talking a lot about turning connection into something quantifiable as a strategy through asking better questions and going deeper with people into maybe spaces that are a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that as a topic with him today about better connection building as a core of community building. In the meantime, mark your calendars. Our next live stream is going to be on September the 5th, Friday, September the 5th. And that is at our usual time, 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time. And we're going to be having as our guest Dr. Deborah Clary and talking about creating a culture of curiosity as a core to community building as well. We've been having a lot of guests who are specialized or think a lot or write a lot about the neuroscience of connection. And I think a lot of these things are at the heart of what we do as community builders. So if you are here for the first time, this is a live and an interactive stream. So please ask questions, comment, give us your hot takes. We may put some of those questions up onto the screen as we go here. And we definitely want to hear from you, where you're from, what your perspective is on all of this. So with that said, let's go ahead and welcome Brian to the show. Brian, how are you, man?
I'm great, Todd. Good to see you. Good morning to you and everybody else that might be listening. Yeah, excited to be here today. Looking forward to the conversation. Yeah.
Now, you and I met, was it through the Connective? Or I'm trying to, we networked with each other, almost maybe 5-6 months ago, I think.
Yeah. It was a bit ago, as I think we were kind of experimenting with the web app, and we had jumped in and chatted about how we were using AI to kind of reinforce connection, and I think it was likely a post that we might have connected on. Yeah.
So for people meeting you for the first time, your organization is called Finding Good. Do you want to maybe just give a quick overview about your work and what you do through that org?
Yeah. So we started this 5 years ago, kind of as an experiment during the pandemic. So I was at the time working for Neuroleadership, doing some of their brain-based coaching and workshops, and then working for Centus, which is another brain-based kind of culture company before that. And when the pandemic happened, I ran out of a job, and there was this little experiment that my friends and I have done for 10 years now, that we had done it 5 years at that time. And we have a once a week call where we get on the phone and we can only talk about what went well for a whole hour. We can't talk about anything else. And when the pandemic happened, we created a Zoom call to let a bunch of other people have that same conversation. And so what sparked from that was this kind of experiment to try to understand what connection was. And so the business has been about talking about connection and sort of evolving these frameworks and processes for how do we operationalize connection? How do we make connection intentional, where so much of connection has been accidental because of environmental conditions that allowed for it, where those environmental conditions have changed. And so now it has to be more intentional. And so I think today, where this has evolved to is centering around helping people do hard things together, with a real underlying of the together part. And the focus on that is because we think that's where connection truly lives at the highest levels. It's the necessity of connection is that we don't do hard things alone, and that actually the underlying problem is the belief that we do them alone, we can do them alone, or we should do them alone. And it's that belief that leads to loneliness and all of the other problems. And if we can focus on, how do we do hard things together, then it allows us to be more intentional in the approach of building connection.
So I love that idea of sort of getting away from the idea, maybe killing the myth of the go it alone, rugged.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is, in some ways, it's a uniquely American malady.
Sure.
Maybe not so much, but like the whole idea of rugged individualism is
Mm-hmm.
something that kind of lives in the American mythology. The
Mm-hmm.
idea of the hero leader, the one that will help us through. Like, obviously, it is in other cultures, but I think we are particularly vulnerable to it here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot about this. This has come up a number of times on the show in the past, where in particular, one person that I've had on the show a couple of times, Sahana Chattopadhyay, who is an amazing community strategist and thinker about cultures and things, has put it in terms of we need to move away from this idea of the hero's journey and think of things more as the pilgrim's journey, which I think dovetails really nice with things that I've heard you say about like moving from me to we as a way of addressing problems. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can kind of just, for me, in researching this and in so many of the experiments and kind of, trials and fails and that we've done there, it comes around to the idea that at the end of the day, as an individual, you cannot be at your best alone, right? It just doesn't, you can't have self-awareness without connection. You can't have confidence without connection. You don't get full validation without some sense of connection. Whether you know that's happening or not is a whole nother argument. But without connection, and in Vivek Murthy's book Together, it was a book written about loneliness prior to the pandemic, Vivek Murthy's former Surgeon General, there's a section in there that actually kind of launched me into this business, got me off of the fence of like, what am I going to do, to I'm going to go. And he says our very understanding of ourselves is a community construct. And he didn't say that. That is a quote from a neurobiologist, right? That from our brain standpoint, our very sense of self is community. You can't separate like where your confidence came from internally and where it was, the stories you heard, the things that people said about you and the interactions you had with others. And so understanding that is just facing the reality that if you really want to be at your highest levels, that happens in community, whether you're paying attention to it or not.
So it's something that's hardwired into us. It's instinctive. I think I found myself saying on a lot of occasions that the community is something that's in our DNA, and it literally is. It's like something in our neuroscience. Like we can't think of ourselves outside of the context of community.
Yeah. And so that's where the term Finding Blueberries came from. And that was a video that we had produced a while ago. It's actually the name of the web app that we developed and we still use. But your brain needs connection at the same level it needs food and water. And the easiest way to think about that is if you've had somebody pass away or leave suddenly, you've said something like, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't think. And that is your brain reprioritizing connections. Other mammals do it. The reason our brain does it is because for millennia, for hundreds and thousands of years, to survive, we needed other people. And you think of that on the resource, like you can think about it in a couple of different levels. Number one, if you and I are out in the woods together, our likelihood of surviving together increases from the simple fact that like you can stay awake to watch the bear and I can stay awake to watch the bear. And now we get more sleep. The second level is we can share actual resources like meat or blueberries. But the third one that most people don't see is that like if you and I are in the same pack and you go get a bunch of blueberries and come back, the blueberries are a valuable resource. But the more valuable resources for me and the rest of the community is the story of how you did it, what strengths you used, how you didn't get killed by the bear, like everything about the experience of how and where you found the blueberries is what increases our chances of survival, because you're not adding it to a Google map, right? You're not punching it in. You're not even writing a book. Like we are creating these mental maps through story. And by listening to you successfully, how you successfully found blueberries, my brain actually interprets that story as my own. And my chance of finding blueberries increases exponentially, not just because I know where they are or what you did, but because my brain has almost experienced that experience and now it's more confident and it's more wired in to look at it. And the more that story happens, the more we are the higher the potential of the group, right?
Yeah, no. Literally stronger together in every way. That's amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
So to maybe kind of dig into this a little further, a lot of this is about sort of building that sense of connection and trust over time. The work you're doing with Finding Blueberries, like how do you build that in some kind of measurable or quantifiable way? For an organization or for a community group or whomever.
Yeah, it's weird. So for a long time, it was about building connection for us. Like, but we found that like that doesn't stick. And the reason it doesn't stick is it's sort of like I'm a runner, right? So I started running 25 years ago. I've run half marathons, full marathons, Ironman. I've run a 100-mile race, right? Now, what we know is that like in running, a lot of people know about the runner's high and achieve the runner's high. But you'll never go to a group that is centered around the runner's high, right? Mm-hmm. Like running groups exist that I'm losing weight to run. I have this mileage that I want to get. I want to check the marathon off my group, or it's a social interaction, right? But like we have these sort of measurable, contextual sort of goals and challenges that we are then like clamoring together for. We're grouping up for the goal or the contextual. Connection is the thing that allows the contextual thing to happen. And what I mean by that is when it's connection for connection's sake, it's really like maybe I need connection, maybe I don't. And if you ask most people, they'll actually say no, right? Because connection is vulnerable. Connection is awkward and hard. But if it's okay, you and I have this shared context. Maybe let's just say for the argument's sake, you want to run a 12-mile or you want to run a half marathon. I've run a marathon. We both have this like shared goal. Then connecting underneath is about how we're actually helping each other towards that goal, and not like direct help like that. It doesn't mean like I'm giving you this thing or you're giving me this thing. It's you ran 12 miles and now you have somebody to share that experience who understands and gets value from that experience, right? Mm-hmm. If you share the story of running 13 miles to somebody that has no context of running, they're just like, yeah. If they can't apply it to something else they've done or goal they're doing, they're just like, okay, that's cool. And they're listening to you only for your benefit.
Mhm.
But if you're running and I'm listening to you, we are both mutually benefiting from the story. And
That
that's where we
tracks.
like that measurement of connection comes in, like how much this interaction is actually building our trust with each other, right? Trust in ourselves and the other person.
That totally tracks, and I think it tracks well with community building theory that we have too, where any kind of convening space that we have needs to be really clear about the purpose. It needs to be really
Yes.
intentional about the purpose.
Yeah.
And
And I
so
can say that confidently because I have screwed that up a lot. Like,
we all
because
have. We all have. Yeah.
because I'm trying to solve the problem of loneliness and disconnection and all the things associated with it, because I very much believe that, like, when we talk about disengagement and burnout and all of these other, human measurable things that we're seeing in business and our own lives, disconnection and loneliness is the heart of it, right?
Mhm.
But that's not this problem we're solving. The problem we're solving is how do we not do the things that are important to us alone, right? How do we find the people who are trying to do the things we're trying to do and create interactions that better allow us to do the things we're trying to do,
I
right?
love that. Amy Jo Kim, who is also a neuroscientist, was on the show a couple of weeks back, and one of the ways that she put it was, your core groups that you're trying to bring together, whether it's for a product or for a community or whatever, are people that they have a problem that your app, your service, or whatever it is purporting to address. They realize they have the problem.
Yeah.
They're actively searching for a solution to that problem,
Hmm.
and they're not finding it.
Yeah.
Like, it's that sense of urgency that's bringing people together around
Hmm.
something. Like, I've sometimes referred to that as the woolly mammoth effect, where you've got
Yeah.
something that is a direct existential threat to you that you're trying to deal with or to address.
And I'll add a third piece, and this is really hard if you're a coach, if you're a leader, and I would imagine in a community, the third one that they want is they don't want you to solve it for them. They
Right.
want you to solve it with them.
Mhm.
Right. And that shift is huge, because we bring a community together and we got all this information and all this. And again, I'm speaking from my experience because I've screwed a lot of communities up, being like, I have all the information on the questions you need to ask and the da you need to do, but I'm not tying it to what are you trying to do and how can we do that together? And how can I create these little mini groups where, hey, you all are doing the same thing together. What if you shared the story of your progress and the challenges you're getting over and the things you did well in a way? Like, what if you had a place where somebody was actually interested in your story and you were interested in theirs, right?
I love
And
that.
what we find in those mini communities is people show up for other people's stories,
Yeah.
right? They initially think it's theirs, but it's for others that they're the stories they're hearing that keep them engaged, because those stories help them feel less alone.
I love that dimension, and that's actually something that's been at the very heart of what we've been trying to build with the Community Consultants Collective. All of us as
Mm.
independent community consultants, sharing our interests, our stories with each other to try to level up, what we're doing. It's such an important dimension to look at through that
Mm.
process. As you're telling me this, it strikes me. This harkens back to your TEDx talk and some of your
Mhm.
messaging around that, which was what I was taking away was it's more important not to always be the one giving the answers to people, but asking the questions that maybe are uncomfortable questions to ask that kind of
Mhm.
break through and lead to a little bit more connection, insight, and forcing you to kind of do the hard work yourself and figure things out.
Mhm. Yeah, in the importance of, like, doing the hard thing yourself and designing those questions isn't necessarily like, like this autonomy thing. Really, it's really like, when I put the onus on them to do the work, what I'm doing is validating the work they've done. And if I go back to that sitting around the campfire analogy, if you come back with blueberries and share them, and we all say, that's awesome, congratulations, but nobody asks how you did it.
Mhm.
Your brain has an answer for that. And it's generally this like, oh, they don't care about what I did, that what I did is not important. You start thinking about like, oh, they're taking me for granted, or they have some other plan. You're like the fight or flight system. And this is, we can actually see this in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, right? We experience this social pain. And what happens a lot is when we try to just give like good job or attaboys or whatever the case might be, when somebody's done something, and we don't ask how they did it, how long it took, like we don't ask about that effort,
Mhm.
except for to like congratulate them. We don't ask about it in a way that is, I call it second order validation. First order validation is like, boy, that was hard, right? Like I'm validating the fact that it was hard, but I'm not into the second order. The second order is, that sounds hard. Tell me what it looked like.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's validation that looks more like an engineer's validation. You did this thing to get this outcome. I want to know exactly what you did to produce that outcome, because the more I hear that, the more I validate that this effort, this strength, this activity can reach that outcome. And the energy shifts when you do that, especially when you do that with a client, or when you're doing that with, somebody you're teaching, because now you're learning from them. And
Yeah.
that, like, and especially we had like, it's something I learned the hard way with kids. Like the benefit of working in a juvenile corrections facility when I did is like, they won't listen to what you tell them to do. They'll flat out tell you. And until that validation happens, until they feel like they have, again, their effort is validated, that you see them and you understand sort of what they've been through, not like tell me about the worst thing you've been through, but tell me about the effort and the strengths and the challenges how you've done that. And then you're on a level that now they're open to hearing
Yeah.
your piece. And in most situations we don't get to that level, and we end up arguing about who's right, who's wrong, what problems, what challenges. And what we're really doing is trying to get that effort validated on both sides.
I love that technique. That's golden. The second order validation is what you call that.
Mm-hmm.
Really powerful. It so one thing that struck me when you're talking about that is, and I've experienced this firsthand, when you start to ask someone deeper questions about how they did something or why they did something on the way that they did, I think there's room for learning there, because it forces them to articulate what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a kind of reflection that especially as you said, like if the person you're asking the questions to is sort of resistant to being taking your helpfully intended advice, at least
Right.
like if they hear themselves say it, they may be like, oh wow, I didn't realize that I did that, right?
Yes. And what you're describing is actually like a process in our brain that we've all experienced. If you think about like the last two big goals you achieved, what I can guarantee happened, and anybody listening to this, like I'll explain it. Like I ran 100-mile race, probably 10 years ago, right? And I can tell you what happened to me is the same thing that happens to everybody else when they finish the goal. And it's the same thing that happens if you brought the blueberries back to the group, is within an hour or two, you start thinking about what I could have done better, what I fell short on, and what I need to improve. That's your brain's sort of bias for improvement, if you will, but it kind of resides in the threat region of the brain, right? Oh, I better make this, and that process is so ingrained. It's what keeps you up at 10 at night, right? You wake up like, what did I say when I was, in fifth grade, and that was embarrassing? That's your brain's default network trying to improve. So your brain on its own is hyper focused on where you screwed up, what you need to improve. But when the pack says, hey, how did you do that?
Mhm.
How did you get over the challenge? What strengths did you use? You're now accessing a region of the brain that has to have this like intentional trigger, right? And you're doing it from the standpoint, if you're the leader or you're the coach or the community leader, you're saying, hey, my job is to make you and others as successful as possible. And I can only do that if I know where you have been successful, if I know how you've gotten through the challenges, if I know, like, you did this course, tell me about how you kept working when you were unsure. Tell me about how you pushed through, like, tell me about how you struggled with the hard things and got through it. And in that sharing, you've amplified for them, right? This thing that, like, you've created a better, we call it like the success map. You've amplified that success map and help their brain see, like, oh, I did this and this to get through it. Now I'm going to look for opportunities to do those things in the future. And you on the receiving end are now much more able to be like, oh, it's these things that help people get through. It's these things that, like, now I'm more of an expert of the potential of that person instead of an expert in the problems they might have or the challenges that might be in front of them.
Man, what you're describing is incredibly powerful, because I think that, you know, for me, it lights up the box of, like, not only helping the individual, but then that adds to the capacity of the group to do more. So, like, that collective wisdom building is, like, at the heart of any kind of community build, you know, that we're trying to enable, for whether it's for a company or for a nonprofit or a church group, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a form of, so my wife is a counselor, a background in mindfulness, and what it is when you really, and when we used to do we still do the experiments where we call them the what went well call, right? And it's the same my friends do. But there's some rules to it. So if you and I were on the call, if I said, hey, Todd, in the last week, what went well with you, or what went well because of you, if I want to make it more challenging, for 10 minutes, I can only ask you questions, right? And I can't give you any, what we call SOFA, no suggestions, feedback, no suggestions, opinion, feedback, or advice. I can't say, oh, I've experienced that before, and toss a story back on you. My job, and this is really the training we give, like the coaching part, is my job is to find myself in your story, right? To see, like, and so to that degree, now you can't just tell me, like, oh, what went well this week was, you know, it's per our discussion earlier, it's like, I did this new GPT activity that I had this, you know, that I created this imagery. Now I need to know, oh, so how did you do that? And, like, did you doubt yourself? And how did you push through that? Like, how did you engage that? Because now I need all the details. And in finding those details, I'm going to find the place I relate.
Yeah.
And what happens in that moment is called neurocoupling. Your brain and my brain fire in almost the exact sequence. You can see if you type in neurocoupling into Google and see the brain scans, the brains light up. My brain does not know the difference between the story you're telling and my own story, right? It literally is experiencing your story as my own. And so I sort of, like, borrow confidence from you, right? Like, I'm able to grow my own self-awareness through your story.
Dude, that is almost spooky and mystical, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like quantum physics, like the reaction at a distance, like two quantum items, like, firing at the same time. Super interesting.
Well, and when you're really intentional about it, and this is what just some of the really cool things we do and we see in, like, live groups and online, is that, like, I can, just like we've all went in the room, right? We walk in a room and everybody's, you know, negative, or there's one angry person and that's viral, right? Yeah. We can go in with these questions and literally, like, if I want to make myself feel better, it used to be, it was like, I need somebody to call so they can hear me, like, you know, verbal vomit all over them about my day or whatever. And I've shifted that to where, like, if I'm struggling, I'm going to call a friend and be like, hey, and especially these 4 friends that we have this kind of practice with. And I'm going to say, hey, tell me about the biggest challenge you got over this week, or tell me when you were the most proud this week, or tell me about the thing you're happiest, I have friends with kids. Tell me about the happiest moment with your kid. And if I do that process of, we call it conversational mindfulness, right? Where I'm trying to find myself in their story, what's going to happen is when they talk in detail about what made them happy, they're going to feel and emote that happiness. And because my brain starts lighting up at theirs, I can't not help but start to feel happy myself. I'm literally borrowing from their story. And the cool thing is it's not like, hey, make me feel happy. I'm allowing them to re-experience a happy experience that they likely might not have had any other time to share. And I get that experience myself. And I share that because, like, if you're running a community, like, there's an endless supply of engaging, joyful, confident experiences. And as the community manager, you're facilitating those, right? You're creating many campfires and through which people can share that journey. And the more they share that, you will never create a testimonial that's more powerful than the stories they share about their journeys with each other, the journey that you're helping them on, right? As Todd puts in here, the transformation that they're sharing, the journey of their transformation together, right? And the more you curate those campfires, the more you sit back and let the community run itself, right?
I love that. That tracks so powerfully because I've always contended that community is really about the members of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many organizations, like there's a tendency with some organizations, some enterprises, that I've worked with in the past, that think it's about like putting out more interesting content, pushing out more, like, here's our stuff. Look at our stuff. You're going to want to talk about our stuff because our stuff is so cool. Maybe, but you know what? It's really probably about the people that are there, the customers, the stakeholders, the prospects. Like, it's about them and what they want and what the problems they're trying to solve. And so, as you said, like, the more you can draw them out, or the more that you can get them to talk about a happy experience. I mean, I think that's key.
And there's a I don't want to call it a trick, but there's a system, if you will, that I think about when it's like, if somebody's coming to you for a goal. I'll give you an example. When somebody calls, me to do a keynote, right? We have the things that we want to ask them. What are your goals? If you've been in the speaking industry, what is your budget, right? Like, is this paid, or you want me to just show up, right? Like, but so we have those tangible things that we need to go through, right? But when somebody calls me for a keynote, we have a shared context, right? And the shared context that I know we have is they want a really good event. I love putting on good events, right? So I know that goal, but I only actually know that goal through my perspective or the stories that I've seen, right? What I don't know is what that means for them. And so the rule that I have is any place you're trying to take someone, the first thing you have to do is find out where they've been there before, how they did it, why they did it, right? And when they did it. And so, to that example, when somebody calls in a keynote, the first thing I love to answer once I get to talking to them one-on-one is, tell me about the best keynote you've ever been to. And tell me about the best, if it's an event they've done before, tell me about the best one you've ever hired. And I want to know why it was the best, what they did, why it mattered, where. And it's just counterintuitive because I'm telling them, like, tell me about my competition, right? Tell me about, it can feel uncomfortable like that. But what happens is, now I hear their story, I understand them, and we're now talking about the same thing. And so if you're bringing people into a transformation, it's easy the danger is to start thinking, this is the first time they've ever been through this transformation. This is the first time. And that's just so beyond the truth. Tell me where you've changed before. Tell me where you've overcome something challenging before. Tell me when you've done something like this before. And now we call it the success map. Now I have the map that you're using. And the more I know that map, and the more you know that map, right? The more then we can create the future map together.
You're lighting up my brain all the way down the continuum of my experience as in the professional world. Like this goes back to even my times. I was a recruiter for many years before I moved into community building, and that relates so powerfully to behavioral interview techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember my training in the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result.
Right.
Sort of like tell me about a time when a project went really well for you.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, like, tell me about the best keynote you
Mm-hmm.
ever experienced. You're just drawing people out so that you can relate and have that connection and share some context so that you can move the conversation forward. I love that.
And the thing is, it feels like it's like this add-on, but I cannot express to you how much time this will save for you. And to do it not just like as a one-off, but like what we do. So when I'm coaching leaders now, for their primary reports, right? Maybe there's 5 people. That like what I'll challenge them to do is like, I want to know this person's, I want you to know rather, this report's goals, their challenges, what they want more of, what they want less of, like that's a list. But now when I go back to each goal, the leader should have a sort of like a challenge to themselves to understand the success map behind each goal. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to achieve this many sales goals. Okay. When have you done something like that before? What is the skill you used? Why did it matter? Right. Oh, I want to be able to have more time before. Okay. When have you done it before? And there's a million different ways to ask those 3. I kind of contextualize them into when have you done it before? How did you do it? Because now we're getting experience, strength, and then impact or purpose. When have you done it? How have you done it? And why did you do it? Right. Because that's the like, okay, I know now we're kind of on the same page. And again, that's endless to do, but you get 2 or 3 of those. And then the next step is once we've identified, here's the goal, here's where you've done it before, we can identify like, okay, here's where you're looking to grow. Here's what you're looking to do. And now we have a cadence for every time you and I get together. Tell me about where you've done this in the last week.
Yeah.
Tell me about the progress you've had. Tell me about the challenge you got over in the last week. And I'm saying like you're bringing this to the pack. You're developing this as you go. And I want to hear that story as we go. And then what gets really interesting is because of with workflows and AI, you can create real, like you don't have to memorize those things. You can create these maps where you can see these strengths overlapping, and I can get really nerdy into it. But to the long story short is like, you can be an expert on their stories without having to memorize them with just, using some AI to get there. And what it changes for the individual in there is really hard to explain. And what happens on the other side of that is so much less complaining, so much less problem solving, and so much more like, hey, how did you use this strength this week? How did you do this thing this week? And they get excited to kind of come and share their story, right? Because they feel like their story is contributing, right?
Mm-hmm. So I'll note in passing, like I think what you're describing also tracks over into the world of agile stand-ups too. What did you work on last week? What are you working on now? What are you working on next week? What roadblocks do you have? How can we help you get some of those things down?
Yeah, we've had some conversations with tech companies on that. And what we find is that like it's this sort of hyper personalization that we haven't done before because it feels like it's overwhelming. Like, how do I know each person and, these sorts of things? And it's not, and we have to make it easier for the person to answer. And that's where the really designing questions come in, that it's not like, if I just say like, what went well this week, which is a good one, right? Mm-hmm. I'll actually contextualize that. The group I've been with for 10 years, we say what went well, but that's not the actual question. Our context, as those 3 others and myself, who I just went on a week-long river trip with all 4 of them, right? Nice. We know what we're actually asking is, where have you lived your values? Where have you been the man, the father, and the person that you want to be? That's what we're actually asking, right? And we know that we've had that conversation. If you don't have that context built in like Agile, especially with an engineer that are kind of binary thinkers, like, what went well? I did my job. I didn't get fired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, in this specific project, how did you bring this specific strength to it? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then pushing in that, like, the other shift is, I'm not doing it to make you feel better. I'm doing it because this knowledge that you have through your experience is vital for us to work together better. So now I have to push into the detail of like, hey, I know you're working on this. How did you work through the uncertainty of it? How did you overcome this challenge? Hey, I know you were kind of pissed off this day. Like, what is it that got you to, and like some of the ones I love asking is like, what kept you from throwing the computer out the window? Right? Like, or we even teach it to teachers with kids, like very simply, like, and we call this the ladder. What was the best part of your day? And they'll be like, nothing. And then you'll make it easier by saying, what was one good part of your day? And if they still struggle, you ask them, well, what was the least crappy part of your day? Right. And why that's important is what you're trying to do, whether it's in Agile or with your team or whichever, is if you can get a group of people to be able to confidently, comfortably, in a safe way share, here's what mattered to me, here's what I did well, and here's the impact it has on others. To be able to say that in a group is the most psychologically dangerous thing you can do. Right? There is no bad thing you did that is more dangerous to say in a group than here's what matters to me, here's what I did well, and here's the impact it had on others. If you can get a group of people to say that, that's the highest level of connection and trust you can build. And it does not happen without an exceptional amount of intention and consistency.
I've heard you term it in well, at least in your TED talk is moving into uncomfortable territory, or knowing that you're going to have to engage in maybe some uncomfortable conversation around that. And my question to you is around, in becoming comfortable posing uncomfortable questions. How far is far enough? How far is too far? Like, how do I judge that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, this is where it can, I don't want to say woo-woo, but this is where it gets like, this is where the fun part in leadership coaching is in it. Like, you can only take people as far as you're comfortable enough to go. Right. Yeah. And when we first started doing these with these questions, people were like, oh, these are really vulnerable questions. And I was like, no, they're not. I'm not asking you the bad thing that happened to you. I don't want you to share. Actually, there's a rule that you don't ask about the bad stuff, because my wife is a counselor, and I know there is a solid line between coaching and counseling that should not be crossed. I do not have the training or capacity to handle your trauma, right? Like, I'll be there if you need somebody to listen, but I am certainly not going to ask you about your trauma. I'm certainly not going to try to create an environment where you need to talk about it at all. Even if I ask you how you got over the challenge, I don't need any information about the challenge. And I'll even preface that, like, you don't have to tell me anything about it. I would like to know how you got through it. Mm-hmm. And that other piece of how you got through it is actually where I'll lean into that discomfort, because I know you're not going to explore that on your own. And if we have a shared context, right? If I'm asking you that in our shared context, then it's with the like, hey, when you're comfortable enough to tell me what strength you use to get this, it's vital for us to know. And what I'm telling the person is, your experience is vital. Your experience is value, which means you are valuable. Mm-hmm. And so for me, like, and this is the thing you have to build up to. But for me, I'm super comfortable making people real uncomfortable, because what is underneath that is, I don't want you to leave here thinking that you're not valuable. I know you're valuable. I know your experience has value, and it might make you uncomfortable, but I'm into that. Right. Like, I don't like, that's the kind of comfortable, you know what I mean? Like the coach that, kind of laughed when you're so tired on the fourth lap. Cool. I know that's going to make, I know that's going to be beneficial for both of you. So, I'll sit here until you can tell me one good thing that happened in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You're saying you're worth it without saying,
You're proving it.
right.
Like I'm not asking this to make you feel better. You can be mad at me and tell me this, but I need this because I need you. Right. And for me, that is because I tell people I'm not a hugger, right? Like I'm not, I'm in the touchy feely field, but I'm not that person. I played
Yeah.
rugby. I played football. I like worked in mining and oil and gas. I understand this from the necessity of it.
Mhm.
Like the feeling seen, heard, and valued is a critical survival element, right? We cannot achieve what we need to achieve without that. And so for me, if I have to make you uncomfortable, and I'm likely gonna make you uncomfortable, right? It's in the service of, because we need to feel like we're a team, right?
Amazing. Brian, I can't believe an hour has gone by here. This is
Oh yeah.
Your insights have been really profound. Really appreciated. And I know people in the chat have appreciated as well. If someone wants to engage you as a coach, or learn more about Finding Blueberries, like where do they go?
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
find me on LinkedIn, Brian Fretwell, or any of the social medias really, or just email me directly. I'm pretty available. I'm not always responsive, a little ADD in there. So if I don't get right back to you, like email again, but you can email Brian at findinggood.com. Again, I'm pretty responsive to that. Or again, find me on LinkedIn or social medias. And again, I try to respond to whoever reaches out, and pretty open. Yeah.
Really great. Really great. I wanted to kind of wind up by dropping in a quote that you had from your TED Talk that I really loved. This was, I thought, a profound insight, and I think it kind of goes along with today. Maybe kind of tops things up. You said, "It's not our darkness that we fear; it's our light that we're most afraid of."
Yeah. That's certainly not original to me, but it's something I learned in juvenile corrections about the kids that I then had to learn about myself, that I think we're all struggling to like really confront. It's that, who am I to be good at something? Who am I to have a voice? Who am I, right, because we're all at the same time, walking around the wilderness, knowing that if our contribution isn't recognized and valued, that we're going to be out there alone. And so like that statement is not just the fear of what we're good at. It speaks to the underlying necessity of being in a place where our contributions have value, the necessity of community and of connection that are, that underlies our deepest fear, because it's right next to, our biggest hopes and dreams.
I can't think of any better place to leave that on. Brian Fretwell, thank you so much for being on the show here. I hope that people do check out findinggood.com. I think you've got a wealth of insights and ways that people can help, whether it's from an internal organization, executive coaching, or community builders. I wish you every success in the world, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you, Todd. Really appreciated the time of conversation, and Kalisa for organizing and putting it all together, and for everybody else who showed up and commented and watched. Appreciate you all. Go find a good story from someone else, and try to find yourself in that story.
Wonderful, wonderful. It did. And yeah, so shout out, I don't say it nearly often enough, but Kalisa is our showrunner and engineer and does a phenomenal job of keeping me organized and keeping the show on track. So just wanted to always give a shout out to her for behind the scenes for the wonderful work that she does. So with that said, we are to the end of another stream here, and I'm glad that if you have been able to tune in and stay with us for the entire show. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us this Friday. I know there's a lot of other things you could do with your Friday, and so the fact that you were here and spent some time, is something I never take for granted. Thank you for coming along. We are going to have again September 5th. Our next guest is Dr. Deborah Clary, who is going to be talking about creating a culture of curiosity. And again, another essential element of community building. I hope you will join us for that. It will be again on a Friday at 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time, and we will see you there for that. In the meantime, please take some time, turn off the computer, go outside, breathe in the fresh air, and enjoy the weekend. We will be back here in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, please keep building great communities. We'll see you again. Kalisa, let's roll the ending.